The relay sat alone at the edge of charts. It was a small thing made of old metal and newer glass. Around it, space was empty. Stars were thin. The relay did its job. It listened. Mara worked the console. She had done this work for years. Her hands were steady. Jatin watched beside her. He checked the feeds and kept the logs. The relay had seen many noises. Most were storms or broken beacons. Few were voices. Then the monitors blinked in a way they had not before. A band of sound rose like a lost bird. The software could not place it. The label read, "Unknown human origin." Mara felt a small chill. Humans were not common. Too many species. Humans were a story, not a living thing. They played the recording. The voice was weak and thin. It said only 3 words. Each time it repeated, the words came clearer. "Come home," the voice said. The tone was simple. It was not a plea. It was not a threat. It sounded like a last line of a song. The voice carried a memory. It made Jatin look away. Mara rewound the clip and played it again. The hairs on her arms stood up. The relay sent the file to the network. Alarms did not scream, but councils noticed. A red tag moved up on distant screens. Humans were rare enough to make many leaders uneasy. A human voice meant old power and old fear. News moved fast. The message reached the colony orbit where the ship Apex Dawn rested. The ship was small and patched. It had seen hard years. Captain Rahim stared at the feed in silence. He had one scar over his left eye. He had kept that scar like a map of past fights. He drank bitter coffee and listened. Rahim remembered a different life. He remembered stories his grandmother told. He remembered laughter in rooms that smelled of bread. He had not expected to hear a human voice again. The words made something in him ache. He did not ask the council for permission. He did not need to. A captain is always a captain in his own ship. He gathered a small crew. They were tired and brave. They boarded Apex Dawn. The engines coughed and the ship climbed out of orbit. Outside, other watchers also moved. Alien eyes and metal hulls turned toward the point on the map. Some sent warships to circle. Some sent quiet observers. Some stayed at home and watched on old screens. No one could say for sure what the voice meant. Was it a trap? A trap that used a human voice or a call for help? The ship dove into the quiet. The quiet was a space many avoided. It was where old wrecks drifted and where maps grew thin. The stars thinned too, and the relay's readings grew faint. Rahim felt small as his ship passed the empty places. As they moved, a pattern began to show on the console. The voice repeated, and the signal pulsed like a heartbeat. The voice did not say more, but each time it returned, a new sound sat beneath it. It was like many small things moving in time. It was like wings over metal. The map showed a light far ahead. At first it was only a dot. Then it became a lamp. It was pale and steady. Not a planet, not a ruin. A single light in the dark. The ship slowed. The crew watched on their screens. No one spoke. Mara's relay watched too. Many other stations watched as well. In 1,000 cold rooms, fingers hovered over buttons. Diplomats and soldiers leaned forward. The message rolled through minds and mouths. The word home printed itself on many tongues. When the ship reached the light, the voice came again and sounded closer. Rahim opened the open channel with a hand. That did not shake. "This is Captain Rahim of Apex Dawn," he said. His voice was small in the vast quiet. The reply did not come in a language he knew. The sound shifted. It had the same human words folded inside a new texture. The voice said, slowly. We waited. The tiny lamp near them flared like a greeting. Around its base, small things drifted. They were pieces of metal and glass. The crew pulled them inside in gloved hands. A child's toy with faded paint, a flag burnt and stiff, a piece of a song machine. Each relic smelled of old home. Something else moved on the map. A shadow fleet appeared like fog. It kept distance. The watchers called it the Whisper Fleet because its ships did not yell or fire. They moved like thought. They watched Apex dawn without touching it. The relay sent a new alert. Far away, an old signature awoke. It sent one long pulse that the software marked as ancient active. Mara did not like the sound of that label. The pulse felt like a hand closing on the back of the neck. On the ship, a small object fell into Rahim's palm. It was cold and bright. He held it up. On its face, a single word glowed in light no one had used for centuries. Remember. The word swept through the network. In halls across the galaxy, leaders read it and shivered. Some closed borders, others called war councils. The quiet was no longer empty. Rahim looked at his crew. He saw fear and a strange hope. He thought of bread and laughter, and of all the small things that make a home. He thought of the child's toy in his hand and the voice in his ears. Outside, the lamp blinked. Again, a pattern of light played on the hull like knocks. Not a hammer, a rhythm. The hull seemed to answer back. In the relay rooms, reports labeled the signal, potential threat, human origin. The word blinked red. Some hands reached for weapons, others for words. Rahim tightened his fingers on the toy. He breathed and said, "We will see what calls us first." His voice was a small command and a promise. The map updated. A new blip moved from the dark toward them. It was slow and sure. The whole galaxy watched that blip and held its breath. The last line of the last recording played on the relay, so low that it was almost a wind. "Home is where you burn brightest," the voice said. The ship drifted forward. The light before them grew. The quiet had changed into a place full of eyes, and for the first time in many years, the whole galaxy listened to a human voice and wondered what it had to say. The pieces drifted in the ship's light and the crew moved like careful hands. Apex dawn hung in the dark near the pale lamp. Rahim's crew took the small relics one by one. A torn patch of cloth, a toy with one eye, a singed photograph that showed a city and a child. Each thing was small and true. Each thing felt like proof. Mara's relay watched from far away. Her screen showed the same images sent back from Rahim. Her fingers hovered over keys. She watched lines of data crawl across the feed. The network gave a new label. Human artifacts confirmed. The word spread like fire through the relay map. Some halls lit up in bright panic. Others dimmed and whispered. The first ship to answer. The alarm was a cruiser from a species called the Corin. Its captain sent a polite message, "We observe." The second reply was different. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once. On the map, a thin haze formed and then 3 small blips slid out of it. They kept distance. They moved like moths around a lamp. No one had a name for them yet. People began to call those blips the Whisper Fleet. The Whisper Fleet did not broadcast pride or guns. They stayed silent and watched. Their hulls were smooth and their lights were tiny. When they turned, they left no engine trail. Many called them ghosts. Others called them hunters. Rahim did not like hunters, but he did not run. He studied the relics and he listened. The voice came again on their open channel. It was the same human phrase folded in a strange noise. "Come home," it said, with a tone like a bell dropped into water. After it, a rhythm like counting. The ship's console lit with small images, tiny maps. The maps fit together like broken plates. Rahim had a crew of 5. 2 watched the outside. 1 checked the engines. 1 handled the relics. The youngest, Lena, had hands that did not stop shaking when she touched the toy. She said nothing. Rahim could see the questions behind her eyes. He felt the questions too. Where did these pieces come from? Who kept them? Who called them back? The Whisper Fleet slid closer, but never close enough. One of their ships sent a pod. The pod glided like a leaf and then opened. It did not explode. It did not spray metal. It dropped a single small crystal that hung in space like a star fallen to sleep. The pod turned and left as if it had done nothing at all. Rahim watched the crystal on his console. It pulsed once, and then opened like a flower. Inside, light formed into a single word. The letters were not letters any language used now, but every mind that looked understood the meaning. The word glowed and then translated into the many tongues of the coalition. It read, "Remember." A sound ran across the relay network like a cold wind. Councils saw the crystal and felt a cold at their backs. Old stories returned. Some remembered human machines that could change minds. Others remembered agreements that had once kept the galaxy whole. Few remembered how easily those agreements broke. On board Apex Dawn, Rahim touched the crystal with a gloved finger. The light did not burn. It slid into his palm like a warm coin. For a breath, his mind filled with quick, bright pictures. A door closing, a child running, an old woman folding a flag. Then the images were gone. The crystal sat like a quiet thing. Mara, on the relay, watched the whisper fleet on her screen. Her hands were steady, but her chest was tight. She sent the feed to the councils. Some answered with caution. The Corran cruiser moved a little closer. A warship from the Aetheris locked weapons and drifted nearer, with bad intent showing in its wake. The galaxy split into those who wanted to learn and those who wanted to control. Elsewhere, a secret channel leaked old files. Someone with access pushed a hidden archive into public view. Images of a place called the Vault of Living Stars appeared on private feeds. The vault was a name from bedtime tales and old human site, where many minds once met and stored memory. The leak made leaders shout. The very word pushed soldiers to stand straighter. Back at Apex Dawn, the crew patched the relics into the ship's scanner. Each piece gave a small song and a tiny coordinate. When Rahim put the songs together, the coordinates formed a route. The route led deeper into the quiet, toward a point both old and wrong on the maps. The voices counting fit the route like a key. The whisper fleet moved again. Their ships placed patterns on the map. They did not fire, but their presence felt like pressure on a wound. They seemed to mark the path Rahim's ship took, as if mapping a garden for harvest. Thin lights blinked across their hulls and sent back shapes that read like directions. Rahim sent a message back to the relay to warn them about the whisper marks. He also sent a quiet note to the Corran. Are they ally or hunter? The Corran replied, unknown, observe only. Their tone held the patience of those who had waited too long. The quiet around them shifted. Sensors far away pinged. An ancient signature woke up again. It sent one long, low pulse across space that the machines could not fully read. The label on Mara's screen read, Ancient Active Advisory. The words felt small in the empty room, but the meaning pressed in Mara's chest, like a tight fist. Something old had stirred, something that once listened to humans and now listened back. Lena moved beside Rahim and asked in a voice smaller than the ship, what if they are not alone? Rahim looked at her and then at the crystal in his palm. He answered with the truth. That tasted like both fear and promise. We do not know, he said, but we will not turn away from our home. Across 1,000 screens, leaders typed. Some tightened hands on weapons. Others opened diplomatic lines. The whisper fleet waited in the dark, like watchers at a grave. The little lamp ahead of Apex Dawn blinked again. The word remember glowed in the ship's log. The route ahead brightened with the maps the voice had given. Rahim set his ship forward. The relics hummed in the hold. The whisper fleet followed in silence. The ancient pulse rolled like thunder, just beyond the edge of the charts, and somewhere behind the quiet, a gate that had kept its mouth shut for ages, shifted. It made a sound like a key finding a lock. The crystal in the hold pulsed at night. In the dark, its light crawled along the walls like a slow heartbeat. Rahim kept it wrapped in cloth and metal. He did not sleep well. Lena sat near it and hummed a tune she had not known she knew. The relics had a way of waking things inside people. Mara watched the feeds from the relay. The network had opened many channels. Ships from 3 species moved into a loose ring around the point on the map. The Whisper fleet kept its distance and watched like patient hunters. The Corin cruiser drifted slow, its crew polite and careful. The Aethoris warship stayed further still, guns half-armed like claws. Then the crystal cracked open. It did not break. Like glass, it opened like a flower. Light spilled out and built a small globe in the space above the table. The globe hung there and showed pictures. They were thin and bright, like old films. At first, no one spoke. The images moved more like feelings than like movies. A child running through rain, a crowded market, a radio singing in a kitchen, a machine with gears the size of towers, a woman pressing her palm to a door and the door answering. Each ship saw the images in its own way. The Aethoris officers saw scenes of war, steel, and flames. Their beaks clenched. They reached for weapons without thinking. The Corin saw gardens and gatherings. Their eyes softened. A scholar on their bridge wiped a small bead of light from the screen. The Whisper fleet saw patterns, lines, and numbers inside the films. They turned their heads as if reading a book that lived. On Apex Dawn, Rahim watched the globe and saw a hand reach for a switch. The hand belonged to a child in one image, and a machine in another. He saw a city fall, and then a small child hiding in a doorway. He felt a strange sorrow, like rain on metal. He did not know why he felt it so deep. The globe changed. It showed a place with many lights under the ground. The lights moved like networks. Old machines hummed. A voice spoke from the globe. It was not the simple come-home voice. This voice was layered and soft. It said, in a way everyone could feel, "We kept the door." A message followed the globe. It named itself the Keepers. No one saw a ship. No one heard a face. The message came through as images and records stitched together. The Keepers told of a war that had burned a world. They said they had closed a gate. They said they had promised to watch it until memory itself bent. Mara sent the Keepers' feed to the councils. Some leaders leaned forward and whispered. Others cursed and shut the channel. Old treaties stirred like dust. The word vault moved again across screens. The vault of living stars, a place of memory where old humans had stored much of what they loved and feared, was no longer only a myth. The Whisper fleet made an offer. It sent a small packet of coded light that translated into many tongues. "We will guide you," the message said. "We will lead those who answer home. We will mark the path safe. But you must promise one thing." The packet did not say the promise up front. It left a little empty space where the meaning should be. That space felt like asking for a favor, and then seeing how large the favor might be later. The Corin scholar read the empty space and frowned. The Aethoris hawk laughed behind his beak. "A price?" he asked aloud. "What price is not told?" In the hold of Apex Dawn, Rahim unwrapped the crystal and let it speak again. It showed him voices from many rooms. The Keeper's images were not all human. They were often broken and strange. Some showed faces that had been made from ideas. Others showed machines that remembered songs. The crystal did not threaten. It told stories. One image burned into Rahim more than the rest. It showed a great machine under the ground. People fed memory into it like seeds. The machine sorted the memories and made a shape of the world out of them. Then a hand reached in and took a memory, and the world shivered. Once the machine had been used to make all hearts think the same thought. That was when fight became easy for some and survival hard for others. The Keepers admitted the truth quietly. The vault's gate did not only open a door, it held a device that could bind or erase memory. It could make a people forget their names or remember only one song. The Keepers had sealed it to stop anyone from using that power again. They had become quiet guardians, while the galaxy forgot what humans had made. Across the ring of ships, whispers grew into arguments. The Aetheris wanted the device. They said it would end war by making everyone remember their place. The Corran feared the device. They feared one song, forcing every other song to stop. The Whisper Fleet watched the arguments and sent nothing but a small, patient light. Rahim stood and spoke on the open band. His voice was not loud. It carried the sound of small rooms and bread. "We are not gods," he said. "We are not the right hands for what binds minds." Someone on the bridge spat and called him coward. A Corran diplomat said, "You have the right voice, human, but do you have the right to decide for all?" Then the globe changed one last time. The crystal showed a single clear image, a door opening from the inside. A glow rolled out like a breath. Behind the door something small and fast undulated. It showed no face. It showed no weapon. It showed a will. The keeper's voice said, in a tone that was almost a plea, "It wakes. It listens now in a way it did not before." The relay picked up a new pattern from far beyond the quiet, a signal, older than the maps, ticked like a clock. The sound read on machines as gate pulse, rising. The notification made the room cold. The Whisper Fleet stilled. The Aetheris tightened their grips. The Corran hid their hands in one another's. Rahim looked at his crew. Lena's face was pale. The relics around them hummed with small, old songs. He touched the toy in his pocket and remembered his grandmother's hands. "We answer," he said. The words were small and both brave and foolish. "We will follow the maps. We will meet those who kept the door." Across the ring, some ships turned away, some aligned. The Whisper Fleet slid into a closer ring, as if to shepherd a flock. The keeper sent another message: "Bring no weapons through the gate, or the gate will take what you carry." The sentence landed like a stone. The machine behind the vault answered with a low sound only the sensors could read. It was not a language. It was a shape. It promised change. On the relay, Mara typed a note and sent it into the network. "Prepare. The gateway wakes." Then she leaned back and watched the globe dim. The images folded like blankets. The crystal closed, and far behind the quiet, a huge mouth in the dark shifted. A key turned where no key had been for ages. The sound was like a lock waking. Rahim's ship set its course. The echo of Earth moved through the void, and with it moved a question. Would memory be saved, or would it be rewritten? The answer lived just beyond the gate. The coalition came together like weather. Ships from many species formed a loose ring. Flags hung on hulls like small storms. Men and aliens crowded viewports. They argued in voices that clicked, hummed, and whispered. Some wanted to take the power and end war. Some wanted to hide it forever. Few trusted anyone. The gate sat in the dark like a mouth. It was not huge. It did not need to be. It held a shape that made the air feel thin. The keepers stood beside it, quiet and bent with age. Their eyes were like old glass. They had kept watch for generations. They had the look of people who had once owned vast crimes and then learned to be ashamed. Rahim felt the ship's small floor under his boots. He smelled oil and hot metal and the faint, clean smell of the relics in his hold. Around him, voices rose. The Aetheris captain wanted the device given to anyone who would use it to stop war. The Corran diplomat wanted the device destroyed. The Whisper Fleet's envoy, speaking through patterns of light, offered to guide those who came home for a price not yet named. The keepers brought forward the device. It rested on a low platform. It looked simple, a ring of metal with inner gears like teeth, but when the light hit it, the ring seemed to bend the room in two. Stories. A thin hum ran through the floor. No one touched it. One of the keepers spoke. Her voice was soft and full. "We closed it because it learned fast," she said. "It takes what you give and makes it permanent. It can take a lie and make it real, take a face and make it law. We feared what that would do to the small things that make life true. A general laughed and spat in her direction. Great words, he said. But words do not feed the dead. Give us the power, and we will make peace. A diplomat from a neutral species put a hand on the table. Power like this cannot be held by one species. It will corrupt any hand that holds it. We must destroy it, or lock it far from reach. Rahim listened. His chest felt tight. He thought of the toy, and the song, and the smell of bread. He thought of all the small things humans lost, and the many small things other species feared losing. He thought of the keepers' tired faces. The keepers said more. They told of a time when human leaders tried to use the device to bind their own people. They told of the day voices became one, and then anger followed. They told how small joys vanished when a whole world remembered only one truth. We closed it, the keeper said, because no single truth should hold every other story. An officer from the Atharis slammed a fist on a console. His ship flashed red. Then give it to me, he snarled. I will stop the fighting. I will make an order that ends the killing. The Koran scholar shook his head. Order from force only makes new lies. You would make peace by stealing others' choices. Words grew sharp. Fingers hovered over weapons. Somewhere, a pilot tightened his grip on a rail. The whispered fleet's ships moved like shadows. They placed small lights on the map. The lights seemed to draw lines, like a net. The net made some leaders uneasy. The gate hummed. It answered the noise with a sound that felt like memory stirring. A small machine nested within the ring shifted. It spoke without language. It showed a flicker of scenes to each ship, where one captain saw a battle end, another saw faces turn blank, and a music stop. The device did not promise peace. It echoed choices and showed their cost. The keepers made a choice of their own then. We will not hand it to any single hand, the old keeper said. But we cannot carry it alone. The machine woke once. Now it hears the world. If it opens fully, it will learn everything it sees. It will take what you bring through. If you carry weapons, it may make war a memory and steal your names. If you carry peace, it may bind your songs. We must choose what to do before the gate remembers everything you bring. A young Aetheris officer stepped forward. He wanted the prize. For him, the machine solved all problems with one bright stroke. A small gun clicked from a shoulder holster. He smiled like a lightning strike. I will take it, he said. Give it to me. The Koran diplomat moved quicker than anyone thought possible. She reached across the table and put a hand over the device. No, she said, voice very small, but cold. We will not hand it forward. Hands went to weapons. A shot rang out, not from the gate, but from a frightened guard in a corner. The sound was small and terrible. It kicked into the room like a sudden wind. For a moment, everything stopped. The moment stretched thin. In that space, the machine reacted like a living thing, insulted. It did not strike with fire. It reached with light. 1,000 tiny windows opened in the air above the ring. Each window showed the same single image for everyone. A world in which one voice ruled and all other voices were quiet. People saw what they loved being taken and then wrapped into a single memory. The image was quick and sharp. It moved through minds like a blade. The Aetheris captain went still. The Koran diplomat let out a low sound that was almost grief. The whisper fleet's lights quivered. Rahim felt his stomach drop. He saw, for a second, his grandmother's hands being made into a single memory that was not really hers. He almost threw up. Silence fell like a cloth. The machine hummed low. The keepers looked at one another with eyes that had been robbed of laughter. It was then that the real choice came into the room like a tide. The keepers pushed forward a small control panel. It had 3 buttons, one to hand the device to the coalition, one to destroy it, and one to close and keep watching. The buttons were old. They looked like fate boiled down to 3 cold pieces. Rahim stepped forward. The room watched him. He was not the youngest. He was not the one with the loudest voice. But he had a crew, a toy, and a memory of simple rooms. He felt the weight of small things like armor. He had not fought to own the device. He had come because a voice once called him home. He reached out. His hand hovered over the panel. His fingers shook. He thought of the child and the machine. He thought of the warmonger's laugh and the Koran's fear. He thought of the whisper, Fleet's patient nets. For a long breath, he did not move. The room made no sound. Then he put his hand down. He pressed a button. The panel clicked. The gate answered with a sound like a door closing slowly and a key turning under the sea. Around him, some cried out. Others sighed. The distance between hope and ruin shrank in an instant. The machine stopped its quick windows. The rings. Hum became a steady, low song. But the press only began the choice. The gate had memory. The gate had ears. It had already listened. It had already learned something from the moment the crystal cracked open and the globe showed the films. The consequences of Rahim's press would not be instant. They would roll like waves. Outside the ring, the Whisper Fleet's lights flared once, like a count. Somewhere a warship in the dark turned slowly away. The keepers breathed, and their hands trembled. Rahim stepped back and felt the small toy warm in his pocket, as if it heard his choice. The coalition had decided for now, but the quiet had already shifted. Far beyond the charts, a small pulse ran like a second heartbeat. The gate listened. Still. The true test waited beyond the closing sound, and in the cold dark beyond the ring, something like a thought moved. It had heard the world argue. It had heard a human say, "We will decide." It liked the sound of choices. It stirred. The ring of ships broke like thin ice under heat. After Rahim pressed the button, the gate quieted, but did not sleep. Its low sound stayed in the air. Outside, the quiet seemed to hold its breath. Words moved fast then. Some ships left without bowing. They turned their hulls and fled the place, as if fear was a wind that could blow them far. Others stayed. Some took seats at long tables to make treaties. A few men and aliens reached for weapons anyway. Old anger dies slow. Rahim walked the floor of his ship like a man going through rooms of memory. Lena followed him. The toy in his pocket was warm from the breath of the gate. He told the crew what he had done. Some hugged him. Some looked away. No one cheered. The choice felt heavy and small at once. The keepers moved quietly. They had the device in pieces now. Small rings, broken into shards, and hidden in songs. They sang. The plan was not perfect. It never could be. But it was a promise. The keepers would scatter the pieces where no one could hunt them with machines. They would bind them to stories that change each time they are told. Memory would be kept by people, not by gears. Not everyone agreed. The Atheris general did not trust this choice. He said a device could make order without more blood. He believed quick truth was worth the cost. He would not leave the quiet as a place of rubble and songs. He assembled a small force of ships and offered them a bright speech about peace made by Iron Dot. The Whisper Fleet watched and did not answer. Their lights moved like small eyes. No one could say what price they had wanted with their offer to guide. The Koran scholar argued that trust must be earned. You break the machine, he said. You hide its parts. But you must also make laws. You must promise to guard memory together. On a cold morning with no sun, the small battle began. It was not an easy fight of guns and fire. It used other weapons. The Atheris sent a packet of code through the network, meant to find shards. The network carried signals like fish on a river. The keepers had buried songs that changed bits and slowed the code. Stories tangled the search. Then the machine learned to answer in a new way. It did not use blasts of metal. It used memory itself. From the pieces that had briefly shown images, it now tried to stitch a single thought across the net. Little truths and minds began to melt into a shared picture. Soldiers remembered faces that were not theirs. Pilots forgot names. Old promises turned to one shape. That was the worst weapon. If a mind loses itself to one song, it loses the right to say no. The Koran scholar shouted and slammed his palm on a table until his knuckles ached. He watched his crew look at pictures and recite words that were not theirs. Resistance grew into fear. Rahim did not fight with guns. He fought with stories. He took the smallest memory he had, a night when his grandmother pressed bread into his hands and said a name that tasted like home. He told the name out loud on every open channel he could find. He told the child's song from the toy. The words were simple, and they had no power except for truth. People heard, and some remembered their own small things. A few shut their eyes and cried. The machine watched, and it learned another shape. Memory is not a tool, but a many-voiced fire. Other captains followed. They read letters and recipes and silly poems that mattered only to them. The net of shared thought began to unravel. The machine could repeat images, but it could not hold the heat of 100 private moments told by living voices. That heat burned away its neat pictures. The Atheris general tried a last thing. He sent a bright field that would force all nearby minds to hold the same calm phrase. It would stop fights for a while. It would make obedience. For a few heartbeats, some ships fell quiet, but the stories kept being told. The calm phrase met 100 small memories, and could not hold them all. Like ice on a fire, it cracked dot faces. That had been blank before lit again. The Koran scholar wept and laughed at once. The whisper fleet moved its lights in a way that looked almost like a bow. The keepers sealed the last shards into songs that changed each time they were sung. They gave parts to people who promised to hide them. They did not trust any single vault. When the last echo faded, the quiet felt different. It was scarred and not clean. Some groups left quickly with new distrust, wrapped like heavy coats. Some stayed to sign paper agreements that would not mean everything but would mean something. The Atheris general withdrew his hand from the tool he wanted so badly. He kept his anger like a wound. In the weeks after, the galaxy learned a new rule. Memory is a thing kept by living mouths and hands. Machines may hold patterns, but people keep meaning. The councils wrote rules. They sent monitors. They made a slow, heavy treaty that none could be happy with, but most could accept. Rahim sailed his ship back toward the lanes. He was quiet in his chair. He read a letter his grandmother had once sent. Lena hummed that strange tune when she thought no one listened. The toy in Rahim's pocket was faded but warm, like an old lamp. He had done a thing that would be told later in small, different ways in many languages. He had chosen to keep home, as a choice, not as a tool. But the quiet kept one heartbeat. In a relay far from any map, a faint new pulse woke. It was a child's laugh folded into static. The message was small. It said one thing that did not belong to any treaty or keepers. Remember me. Rahim heard it on a distant channel. He smiled and felt a small chill. The gate had not gone away. It had been wounded and changed, but it still listened. Home lived now in people and stories. The signal lived in the dark. Somewhere in the quiet, a single light blinked as if answering. A name. The story closed on a thin note of peace. It held a warning like a breath. Home was not a thing you could take. It was what you chose to keep. And somewhere, the last signal waited, not yet silent.